Normally, when police are investigating unsolved mysteries, they rely on witnesses, CCTV surveillance footage, forensics, and other physical evidence found at the crime scene to try and identify the perpetrator. But in some strange cases, family members or investigators receive letters as clues, either from the culprit or someone with knowledge of the case. But even this isn't always enough, as some of these mysterious cases still remain unsolved. Number 5. On a Thursday morning in May of 1977, 18-year-old Bernard Ross Jr. left his home where he stayed with his parents, Bernard and Carol Ross, in Fort Kent in Maine. They noticed that he seemed to be extremely upset, though they had no idea why. Little did they know that it would be the last time they would see him. Bernard's aunt's pickup truck was later found abandoned and undamaged on a dirt road in Maine after it was stolen from her house, and it was suspected that Bernard had taken it before going missing. Witnesses reported that they had seen him in a wooded area in Ashland. His parents also told police that he was taking antipsychotic medication at the time, causing further concern for his mental well-being. Despite police's best efforts and numerous searches being undertaken, Bernard was never found, and he remains a missing person today with no further clues being found either. For the next 40 years, his parents were left without answers, as it became a cold case. But in 2016, Bernard and Carol received a letter from an anonymous source claiming that they had knowledge of their son's disappearance. It also mentioned a missing person story that was published in the Kennebec Journal. The story included a reference to Bernard's strange case, and the letter suggested that the newspaper publish another story about Bernard's disappearance. Police have declined to release any further information on the contents of the letter, but have asked anyone with information on the case or the person who authored the letter to come forward by contacting them at 1-800-924-2261 or 207-532-5466 and ask to speak with Sergeant Darren Crane. Bernard's nameless case number is #MP8953, and his NCMEC case number is 1154562. Number 4. At 9 p.m. on the 18th of March, 1984, two masked men with firearms burst into the house of 42-year-old Katsuhisa Izaki while he was taking a bath. Izaki was the president of Izaki Glico, a company in Osaka that manufactured some of Japan's most popular candies. He was taken outside and forced into a waiting car and taken to a warehouse near Ibaraki, and demanded that the company's director pay a ransom of 1 billion yen and 220 pounds of gold bars for Izaki's release. It was the largest ransom demand ever made in Japan at the time, and police were at a loss as to who the culprits were. But after being kept in the warehouse for 3 days, Izaki managed to escape and return home. However, his ordeal with the kidnappers, who called themselves the Monster with 21 Faces, was far from over. Shortly afterward, 6 cars at the candy factory were set on fire, and Izaki started receiving scary messages in the form of letters that taunted the police as stupid fools. The letters also included clues on how the kidnappers could be caught, including the color of their vehicle and the supermarket chain where they bought their food. In May, another note from the kidnappers stated that they had placed several packets of the company's candy on store shelves after poisoning them with cyanide, forcing the company to recall all of their products. This resulted in 1,000 workers losing their jobs, and the company saw a major financial loss of $130 million. No evidence was ever found that the candy had in fact been poisoned, and in June, they sent another letter claiming that they were done with Izaki. In September, the Morinaga Candy Company received a letter from the group demanding money. When Morinaga refused to pay, they received further threatening letters stating that they had poisoned 20 boxes of candy and placed them in stores between Hakata and Tokyo. This time, police found the candy and discovered that it had indeed been poisoned, but they were once again unable to trace it to anyone. Police released CCTV surveillance footage of a suspect that they dubbed the videotaped man, and audio recordings of a woman demanding money, but to no avail. During an attempted money drop, police noticed a suspicious bystander that they called the Fox-Eyed Man, but he was never identified. Their last letter read, quote, "We are bad guys. That means we've got more to do other than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life." They were never heard from again, and it remains an unsolved case. Number 3. On the 28th of June, 1990, 2 flight attendants who were dining at the Casa Gallardo restaurant in Bridgeton, Missouri, noticed a strange object outside the restaurant's window in the bushes. Upon closer inspection, it was found to be a human skull. When Chief Walter Mutert inspected the area, he noticed that it was very well kept, and he concluded that the way the skull was placed made it clear that it was placed there by someone who wanted it to be found. When the skull was analyzed, it was found to belong to a woman, but police had no way of knowing who she was, and so it was placed into evidence and forgotten until more than a year later. In September of 1991, the Veneta Park police station received a strange, unmarked envelope with an old flyer from the Casa Gallardo restaurant. On the back, a message was written that read, quote, "The Bridgeton police have L. Sherman's skull." No fingerprints were present on the flyer, and police couldn't find any DNA to test. Dental records showed that the skull did indeed belong to a 26-year-old woman named Linda Sherman, who had been missing since the 22nd of April, 1985. Police would then learn that Linda and her husband, Don, had a rocky relationship due to his jealous nature, with Linda having to take a protection order out against him, only to rescind it later when they reconciled for the upteenth time. She had also told her family that Don had a violent temper that scared her, and she filed for divorce. On the 22nd of April, Linda didn't show up for work, and when she didn't come home either, her family suspected that foul play was involved in her mysterious disappearance. Don was the only person of interest who wasn't ruled out as a suspect, but he maintained that he had nothing to do with her disappearance and passing, despite one of his ex-girlfriends telling police that he'd confessed to the murder. No further clues were ever found, and it's unlikely that Linda's case will ever be solved. Number 2. In June of 2014, Derek and Maria Brodas had just bought what they thought was their dream house, located at 657 Boulevard in Westville, New Jersey, and they started moving their family into the new house. But soon after moving in, they started receiving a series of scary messages signed by a person who called themselves the Watcher. The first letter read, quote, "I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy." A few weeks later, they received an ever more threatening letter, with the Watcher claiming that he'd been watching the house for decades. They also stated that their father and grandfather had watched the house in earlier years, and added that they would find out why the family had moved into the house. The couple contacted the Westfield police, who asked them not to reveal anything about the letters to their neighbors, as everyone in the neighborhood was considered a suspect. Derek and Maria decided to contact the previous owners of the house, who told them that they had also received a strange letter on one occasion, signed by the Watcher. But they thought nothing of it, and heard nothing more from the stalker for the next 23 years while they lived in the house. But more letters arrived, claiming that there was something hidden in the walls of the house. They stopped all renovations on the house and kept their children away from the property. And soon another letter arrived asking, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." Police started to suspect the couple's neighbor, Michael Langford, who had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. But DNA found on the envelopes revealed that it had been sealed by a woman and didn't match anyone living in Langford's house. When a threat assessment of the letters was carried out, it was concluded that they were likely written by an older person, and that they didn't seem overly threatening, but they seemed unpredictable. The couple decided to sell the house, but when they were unable to, they decided to demolish it and develop the lot. They then received one final letter in which the watcher threatened revenge if the house was harmed. In 2019, the house finally sold at a loss of $440,000 for the Broaddus family, and the watcher was never identified. Number 1. In 1925, 45-year-old schoolteacher Cora Stallman mysteriously disappeared in Cincinnati, Ohio. She was living in a cottage on her sister Anna's farm, where she worked as Anna's business manager. Anna and her husband Tom had an arrangement where they lived on separate properties, though Tom would come over for a meal every day. Cora was considered an eccentric woman who often rode her horse into town. Soon, rumors started spreading that Tom and Cora were having an affair, but this was vehemently denied by Cora, Tom, and Anna. On the 1st of August, Tom went to Cora's cottage to check on her, but found that she wasn't there. He asked Boston Martin Lilly, a tenant farmer on the property, for help, and they searched the property. At the time, Anna was on a cruise on the Mississippi River, and so had no knowledge that her sister was missing. While searching the farm, Tom decided to look in a cistern that was covered by wooden planks, and to his horror, found Cora deceased, sitting in about 4 feet of water. Next to her in the water, they found a series of letters that had been written anonymously. Newspapers reported that Cora had ended her own life, but investigators were left baffled. There was no water in her lungs, she showed no evidence of having been attacked, and her autopsy showed that she was healthy with no poison found in her system. It would later come to light that Cora had received several scary letters from townsfolk in the weeks prior to the incident, in which she was berated as common and a snob. They also stated that her horse was a nuisance, and fearing an attack, she started wearing a whistle around her neck. Police also learned that Cora claimed to have been attacked on the 31st of July by a man dressed in overalls and a straw hat. The hat and clothing were found, but not the culprit. That night, Tom slept on her porch, and when he woke up, he heard Cora moving around the house, so he left to milk his cow. When he returned, she was missing, and he started his search. Her passing was ruled to be of unknown causes, and Cora's case remains an unsolved mystery nearly a century later. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.